Welcome to our investors panel. My name is Holly Meadows. I have 20 years experience in technology transfer. I've been in 3 technology transfer offices. I'm now with TreMonti Consulting, Inc., and we work with a lot of you that are in the crowd. It's nice to see everybody here today. I have Chris, Rima, and Ruben with me, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves first, and then we'll dive right in.
Let me go first?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chris Garabedian. After 25 years being an operator in the biopharma industry, AbbVie, Gilead, Celgene, CEO of Sarepta, entered the investment world about 5 years ago. And I have 2 investment vehicles. One is a company incubator accelerator we call Xontogeny, and that we have a seed investment collaborative model. So we often work with first-time CEOs, scientific founders, early stage programs where we can seed and provide a lot of oversight and active management. And then I also run venture funds for a larger investment firm in New York called Perceptive Advisors. They've been one of the more prolific crossover investors, public equity hedge fund. They have credit funds, SPACs, everything else. I run their venture funds. We have over 700 million of assets under management across 2 funds. The last one we closed last year. So happy to be here and excited about the panel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rima. I'm a investor with KDT Ventures. So we're a seed stage focused investment fund, a team of physician scientists who invest really at the intersection of where science meets compute. And where that translates a lot is in companies focusing on biological engineering and computational biology platforms as it translates to therapeutic discovery and development.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ruben Flores. I bring 10 years of experience in technology transfer as Vice President and Director of Harvard UCLA Medical Center, UC San Diego, and USC. Before that, 12 years in the corporate world, in R&D, marketing, licensing, and in licensing a lot of technologies from tech transfer. And for the last almost 3 months, I joined a very early stage investment group that was created 2 years ago. We're a company. Not a fund, but we're a well-seeded fund by VCs investors that works on de-risking early stage academic technologies to make them investable in 12 to 18 months. So we bring money, but more importantly, we bring talent, and we hire fractional executives to help run the company with the scientific investors. More about that soon.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you all being here. I'm going to dive into some really just blunt questioning, because that's what these people want to know, is how to approach you all. So thinking about when you're approached by researchers or tech transfer offices or persons that want to talk to you about funding, what are red flags that come up, even scientifically, operations wise, with the entity that's coming to you? What are things that are just kind of immediate red flags to you?
Sure. Well, first, our model has been a little bit different from the start. So if you go to a lot of VCs or investors, they'll say, what's the most important thing? Well, the team, those are the first 3 things: team, team, and team. And we don't expect, founders of early stage companies to know fully what they're doing, right? We think that if we just wrote them a check, it would probably fail, and that's why they wouldn't get funded. So we basically really focus on the technology and the idea. And we have that experience, right, on our team to say, okay, this is what you need to do to make this a successful program. And we want to, help advise, mentor, train that first-time CEO so they understand what good drug development looks like. But what we believe is that there's a difference between being a good research scientist or lab researcher and being a good drug developer. Those are 2 very different disciplines. So we embrace that scientist or the underlying technology and science in a company, and we really collaborate and say, all right, let's problem solve this. Because do you have an idea? Do you have the right technology? Are you going after the right target? And that's part of the due diligence. And then if we say, yes, we like this, then we're going to play a very active role to say, here's how to do it right. Here's best practice, because most people will fail. The best teams fail. 90% of the companies will fail in the clinic. And so we know how hard it is, and we don't have those red flags. We're like, the red flags are around the science, the technology, the translational data. That's what we focus our attention on, as opposed to the structure or the team or, what their skill sets are.
Thanks. Yeah, like Chris's team, we invest very early, very often in first-time founders. And so that doesn't scare us at all. I think if I were to just describe one red flag. And in the context of team, this is the founder who's approaching us. I really look for someone who's a historian. So this is more of a green flag than a red flag, but you should know the context in which you're starting a company, right? You should be able to say, hey, I'm starting a gene therapy delivery company in the context of this is where AAV is today, this is where EVs are today. Your competitor isn't necessarily the exact same modality that you're trying to put out there. It's every modality trying to target and treat that same indication. How do you think about starting a company in the context of historically where your science has failed and thrived, and in the context of what other companies, what other groups are trying to do something similar, and how do you show that you have a very differentiating edge in that technology? If that's there, then we love to partner with you to help build your company. And we do have a different model. We do fund companies. So we are looking for someone who's going to quit their day job and has the conviction to form that company. So in terms of a red flag for us, we do look for someone who's going to be full-time.
We're very similar type of investors in that we invest in early stage from an idea, even without a patent or a patent application. So we also don't expect people to know, what to do, how to do in terms of building a company. One red flag for me is though, when the inventor pretends or tries to ignore reality or tries to hide other data or ignore the competitions, right? That is actually not good for anybody. We will find out eventually. And if you don't tell us upfront, that's not going to help you or help us. So we want to help you de-risk this as early as possible. So to her point, you need to be very well informed as a historian. What's the context? What's the competition? Why am I doing this? Why am I different? Let's acknowledge what's happening right now so we can help you build the best company that we can.
That's great. Okay, so I heard conviction and candor or realism, and then just not as much the team, but having good science. And so,
Well, Ruben said one thing, humility is important.
Okay.
You need to know what you don't know. And if they are trying to pretend they know everything about it, that's a red flag.
yeah, and so that was kind of leading into the next question. So if we've got red flags, what are just like green light? We really like this pitch, this person, this team, or this, what are some just really standout characteristics that you want to?
Sure. So this is one, especially when thinking about early stage biotech, I think is a little controversial, but as in any business, product matters. And when there's a founder who's coming to us saying, hey, I want to create this drug, this modality, this manufacturing system, this, digital drug discovery platform. And I know who wants it, who's going to sell it. I know whose pain point I'm filling, who has the capital to pay me for it and can help me build a business off of the technology that I'm developing today. That is the person that is so rare and is the person I'll say, hey, take my money today and I'll figure it out after.
Take my money.
Let me add to that. I think we want them to be a domain expert. Okay. They need to know their area really well. And we see a lot of entrepreneurs that come to us and they know their technology and they think they're almost like in a vacuum. This is what I want to do. And I think if it gets approved, but they don't understand the competitive landscape. They don't understand who their competition is. If we have somebody, it's very rare, that comes in and really understands that, and they have a slide and they're like, these are all the ones that, wow, we haven't even heard of those companies. And you even know who the competitors are. And they know what clinical study just read out and that where that bar is of what they need to clear in terms of the ultimate clinical outcomes. That is what we're looking for. We don't expect them to have the network of all the service providers to know how to navigate FDA regulatory discussions. But if they know their space and their area, we can work with that. And that's kind of that green light that you said.
And similarly, we have our network of CDMOs, manufacturers, device prototyping that we work with. So wouldn't expect you to know that. But on the other hand, I guess if you're coachable, if you're willing to listen to our suggestions, if you're willing to work with us and find the path together, that's definitely a very good positive sort of first step towards working with you. The other one is, I always say, the symptom of a product is that someone is willing to pay you for it. So either they're asking you for your technology now, even in the academic setting, or like Rima said, where this technology fits in the marketplace and you bring that knowledge with you. And, we can validate it, we can modify it, but those are really good places to start a relationship with.
So I'm going to turn to you each as individuals. So Chris, you have been a CEO of a company. And so can you just tell us how that informed your personal investment thesis?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I consider myself a drug developer who invests as opposed to an investor. And that's an important distinction. So after 25 years, and I wasn't born with this, I was really fortunate to have worked for some of the best and brightest companies, Gilead, Celgene, learning from folks who did drug development better than the industry average. So when it came time for me to get tapped to be a CEO of a genetic technology and rare disease that's known as Sarepta now, I knew what I needed to do, right? And the company had been lacking that management who had that depth of experience. So fast forward, because what I witnessed was that so many of these early stage biotechs would make early mistakes. They didn't have that level of experience. They didn't have that exposure with what does good drug development look like. That's when I realized like there's a gap here and nobody with my experience is filling that gap. They're selecting board seats. They're becoming a CEO of another public company. So I thought we really need to step up and give back to the next generation and create the next generation of biotech CEOs and teach them what good drug development looks like. So for me, it really informed that you make decisions every week on a program, right? And many times those are critical decisions. And if you get them wrong, it's sometimes unrecoverable. And so that's what's informed me is that treating my investments the same way I would as if I were CEO, and we play an active role. Sometimes we have weekly meetings to discuss these issues, right? Around an experimental design, the regulatory strategy, which, service provider should we use? What manufacturer should we go with? So I think it's rather than just sitting on the board and hearing the pitch every quarter and what went wrong, what went right, I think that leads to failure. And I think that active role, which I think my fellow panelists kind of share in that view, is what I brought to the table as a former CEO.
That's excellent. Ruben, what about you? You're like me, you've been in tech transfer. So how did that inform how you act as an investor today?
Well, I actually would like to speak about the fact that my experience in tech transfer informed my decision to join General Inception. I'll talk about it in a second. But my work in tech transfer was informed by 12 years of working in the corporate world. So to answer your question, and I just wanted to make that context, to answer your question, the way it influences me in terms of deciding how to work in a technology is that I understand deeply that each technology, each PI, it's unlike the one next door in the same university or in the university next door or in the state next door or across the country, right? So I'm always very curious to understand what is your particular scientific situation. How do you stack up in the field? What is your relationship with the university, with your tech transfer office, right? There's a lot of sort of local relationships that at some point will become important in company formation and moving it forward. So that's kind of what I'm, seeing informs my decision. And I just want to say I joined General Inception because there's about 35 of us now. The majority of them are seasoned venture capital investors. And we're all very passionate about and know how to work with early stage entrepreneurs, right? We like to mentor, we like to coach them, we like to partner with them, learn at the same time, and hopefully make a successful company together.
Rima, you were at an early accelerator and with the therapeutics. Again, I'd like to know how that informed your philosophy on investment.
Absolutely, yes. So I joined KDT Ventures from a firm called the Fannin Innovation Studio. It's based in Houston, Texas. We in-license early assets from TTOs and de-risk them using a ton of grant funding. So I applied for probably 5 SBIRs per cycle for the entire time I was there, and use whatever funding we get to de-risk parts of that portfolio up until a data package forms that we think we could go out and seek investor funding for. And I helped spin out a couple of companies through that model before joining KDT. And I think one of the biggest lessons learned is the pros and cons of grant funding and how to use it well. Pros, you get a good amount of capital, $250K up to $2 million, to what I call develop the killer experiment, or the killer set of experiments. Chris and I were just talking about this, that help you either kill an idea, which is just as valuable as saying, hey, this is positive. This is trending well. I think this is showing that I'm creating a technology that differentiates from market and can perform better than, let's say, a therapeutic asset is performing in the same model today. And it gives you that time and focus and capital to create and deliver on that killer experiment. Cons are it takes a lot of time to get grant funding, to wait for it. And often when you're applying for grant funding, you have to ascribe value to a technology, thinking about its late stage indication value, as opposed to thinking about, hey, I have potentially a platform in hand that could let me scale across a number of indications, as an example. And so it restricts your ability to really think about the value of the technology that you have in hand and how to scale quickly. And that's where actually I joined KDT, to be able to provide capital at that same stage that you often look for grant funding, to look at these technologies with a lens of how do you scale this into a platform and potentially solve a much bigger problem than what grants let you outline on the outset.
Those were excellent answers. I love that because I can see where you each kind of how your mindset informs how you do your jobs. Really great. Okay, so now that we know more about how you think about things, let's talk about how you like to be communicated with, like cold calls or an email with a non-confidential summary, or let's just talk a little bit about how each of you feel about that first approach from an entity or an entrepreneur.
Sure, I'll go first. Thank you. Email me, call me. Happy to share my email and my phone. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to take in leads, deal flow. It's my main role at General Inception. I try not to pass judgment on the science, except if it's really way off from what we do. So we work in 5 different verticals: therapeutics, diagnostics, life sciences tools. We have a lot of work done in the microbiome and cell engineering and therapy. So pretty much any area of life sciences right now. But just email me, call me, send me a paper. I have experts in each of those domains at General Inception that would receive your information, your document, and they want to get in touch with you. They're going to call you. They'll call the tech transfer office. If we need to put a CDA in place, no problem. We can do that all the time. But just send me your information, send me your pitch deck. Tell me why you think it is important. Tell me why this is unique. That's it. And then we'll let you know pretty quickly, in a week or less, whether this is something of interest to us. And then my practice leads will take it from them.
That's great. I'm also always open to getting communication in whatever form. The one thing I will say is try to make it a warm intro. You know, like LinkedIn, you know James, I know James. Do what you can to make it warm. That makes a huge difference and definitely sets you apart. The other thing is know the context. You know, we don't invest in single asset therapeutics, so it doesn't make sense to send me a deck. But anything where you can say, hey, I think this is a single asset, but I'd love your thoughts on, I get so excited. Let's brainstorm, let's think about it. And I love this idea of creating a creative partnership where, you know, we can work for some time together. You don't have to pitch me the perfect company the first time we talk or the first time you send me something. But the idea of inciting this conversation, I think, is often what sets apart the ones I end up paying more attention to, because we all have limited bandwidth. I think time management is probably the one thing that comes up the most among VCs of struggles and challenges. So try to set yourself apart and just say, hey, you know, spur the creativity in me.
Yeah, I would say what I see as the problem sometimes in approaching is don't make the mistake that you have to have the perfect, you should prepare, but don't think you have to have the perfect pitch deck and the perfect intro. What we hate is like, well, we need a CDA in place for me to share anything. Like you're not going to get invested and they're going to be very skeptical if you can't share a non-confidential deck. So always start with information and all of that. But I think part of it is approach this. Most VCs, most investors have to say no to 9 out of 10 companies that they interact with. So go into it recognizing that and understanding that and approach it like we do, which is this is a conversation. It's an opportunity to learn. And what does an investor want? Get that feedback, ask questions. If they're not giving you real feedback, say, hey, I want you to be candid. What did this fall short on? Because that starts a relationship. And then we often find that those companies come back and they've done what we've asked them to do, and then we can invest. Or sometimes we're surprised and we really like the technology and they need to redo the pitch deck. And we'll say, hey, we're going to help you retell this story, but we really like your technology. So don't be afraid. Don't think that, okay, I need to prepare. Just reach out, share what you've got, be open to feedback. And we're not going to, penalize you. We won't. Some investors might. We're not going to penalize you because everything's just not perfect, because we're going to focus on the idea, the technology. What data do you have supporting that this can be something of value?
If I can add to that, because that is one of the, also a red flag, is a deck that comes out with 5 slides describing the TAM of Alzheimer's and no information on what you do to solve the problem. Focus on the what you do in a non-confidential way in 7 to 10 slides. That's usually at least the material that'll pull me in to say, hey, there's something really interesting about this technology. I've seen a ton of people trying to do this and this one seems different. I'm ready to dig in.
And I want to say, even if you don't have a publication or a paper or a poster, you can actually describe your technology at broad strokes. I have a new small molecule biologic that works through this pathway to solve this disease. Boom, right? You didn't tell me anything that no one else is thinking about or knows. You didn't tell me anything confidential, but you piqued my interest. And to Chris's point, really always ask for feedback. We strive to give you feedback precisely for the same reason. Sometimes we discover science that is maybe a little too early for us, but we need you to, move in this direction, and we're more than happy to tell you where to go.
Yeah, we have kind of a mental wall of shame of the worst pitch decks we've seen. And I can tell you, if you put data in there, it's not going to fall in the worst pitch decks. It's usually the ones that, what is your modality? What data do you have? Like, there's just nothing there. It's what do they call it? A nothing burger, right? And so like put data in there, right? That's really important. And you'll never be on that wall of shame.
I love that. Okay, so warm intro, no nothing burgers. Mention that you know James Zanowich.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in.
I'll
Okay,
get you in.
very good. And I noted that Rima, you specifically said you are not a single asset investor. What about you two, Chris and Ruben?
In therapeutics,
Single asset or platform?
Single asset platform. Yeah. We really are looking for, as my friend from Merck said yesterday, actually, I'm going to borrow that from him. We're looking for compelling science. Really, that's what we're looking for. If you think your science is compelling, well, share with us and let us know why you think your science is compelling, and we'll take a look at it. But yeah, single assets, platforms, anything.
We're broad-based investors. We predominantly focus on drugs, but we have got device, diagnostic, tools companies, research tools. We have a CDMO, we have a digital CRO investment. So the venture fund, we're pretty broad-based. But I would say really what we're focused on is less about theoretical platform, like we're probably not going to invest in CRISPR 3.0 and we need $200 million to validate the platform. We need to have at least a lead asset. It doesn't have to be an optimized lead, but something that is ready to at least characterize, test, that we can have a vision that this is going to be in the clinic within 2 years. That's usually, otherwise it's the proverbial too early for us. But that's really what we focus on. And then we look at what value are you going to create? Is this really going to become a new standard, right? Like for example, on the device side, we usually say no to 510Ks because you really need to prove that you can get adopted and that it's going to replace the current, therapy. So those are not high value until you've proven that. And sometimes it takes too much money to get to that commercialization. But pretty much we'll look at, and we'll give you a quick no. So if you send us something and it doesn't fit, we'll let you know. And so we don't want to discourage anybody from sending, your idea to us.
Then Chris would just send it over our way. It's a little bit too early. So we all talk. So it's great. Just send us things through James, and
Yeah.
Everything goes to
make
James.
sure it gets to the right people.
You
Yeah,
wanted
we're
us here.
James. Just levels above us all.
So we're still kind of coming out of a pandemic. We've had an IPO slump. What are trends or changes you're seeing in your industry?
I mean, we're in very, very early stage investment, and we are not changing the numbers of companies that we want to start. Our goal is actually, we started 25 over the last 2 years. Our goal is to start another 80 to 100 over the next 4 years with the current funding that we have. And the idea is to create an evergreen fund to continue to do this ad infinitum. But clearly, with the way the markets are, you're just going to pay more attention to the basic science. Is the science solid? How it really truly is outstanding. Me Too drugs, for example, or, incremental, improvements over existing technologies is not something that we're going to do, or many other people. So for us, we need to continue to feed that early stage pipeline. Of course, we're hearing from late stage, investors that they're pausing, right? But I keep getting from early stage VCs, I keep getting calls like one a day. Do you know this PI? Do you know this? I'm talking outside of GI, right? I'm getting calls and emails. Can you connect me with? I'm interested in. So early stage, I still see activity right now.
Likewise. And
Okay.
we early stage, we're still deploying, our friends are still deploying it. The difference, I think, is in how you think about milestones. So I mentioned we're platform investors. What does that really mean? It means you can generate a number of, let's say, insights off of the data platform or targets off of the drug discovery platform. And at some point, there was a lot of partnering activity with pharma where you could say, hey, they're going to pay me for a few of the insights coming off of this platform in an upfront of, let's say, in the order of 10 million. And then there's going to be milestone payments and there's some revenue you could count on that way. I think there's been a shift in that availability of that funding. We've seen pharma companies, and Chris can describe this probably way better than I can, but there's a focus on developing their own assets more so than, at least, for the few I've talked to, more so than partnering on upfront innovation. And so that has led us to think about milestones for companies that are, let's say we're leading the seed and they need to prepare for a Series A in 18 to 24 months. You need to have an asset coming off of that platform. That asset has to have in vivo efficacy, potentially pre-IND validation, for a Series A investor to actually open the slide deck. And that can continue to change over time. Again, Perceptive will have a better idea of that, but that certainly morphed how we think about the threshold of milestones we're looking for, at least the founder to be thinking about and raising enough capital to achieve before the next time they have to go back and raise. Remember, we have our own investors as well. We get more funding based on the step up in valuation and the investments that we're making today. And so it's really important for us to think about that just so we can stay in business. Are you reaching a milestone that is going to get another investor who's a bigger investor investing in your company down the line?
Yeah, let me try to provide context of what's been happening in the markets. There's been a real sea change in the last year, and early programs are taking the hit, okay? Because you've got valuations have come down publicly. There are too many of a pipeline of private companies that can't get to an exit. And so what's happening is our venture fund, which was only doing Series A, now we're getting Series B, Series C, flat rounds, right? Extended rounds. And so now that's competing and inching out that earlier stage investment. The other thing is that I talk a lot about the inventory of companies that have been created over the last few years. And this is a real challenge and a problem. And so I tried to indulge me while I try to think of the best analogy. Think of a biotech company as a product, okay? And what we've done is we've created a big inventory. Imagine you had a car dealership, okay? And your trucks are your antibodies and your sports cars are gene therapy and all that. So you got all these different things. Each one can have different features. So they're all unique, searching for a customer out there. So venture capital, okay, are the ones who are buying the cars for your inventory. Venture capital, they're creating these vehicles, okay? The buyers of those vehicles, okay, are public equity investors, IPOs, later stage venture, or pharma to acquire those companies, right? That's who's buying those cars, okay? What's been happening over the last 5 years, those cars were flying off, right? Inventory, right? They were going public, right? The easy money was flowing. Now that inventory is backing up. Every VC, oh, wow, we have how many companies that are private? We don't have an exit. We can't get them to raise. So even those cars that were driven off the lot, right? They took out a loan. They need to continue to fund it and they're running out of money. They can't raise the next round. So now those cars might come back in the inventory. So we have way too many companies. And as the venture community sees it, We don't want to create another 300 new companies to add to the list. So everybody's slowing down, they're pausing, and the gap between haves and have-nots has grown bigger. The haves might be those 5% or 1% that you read about, right, in the trade press, but it's that other 95% that are really struggling out there, and it's still happening. So I say that not to throw a wet blanket. We're here because there's a lot of dry powder. We have money to invest, a lot of great technologies. It's really figuring out, when can we trust the markets to be working again? And when can we believe that there's enough money? And the one thing that people want to do is have enough runway to get to real value inflections. This incremental investment and hoping that some other investor is going to come in, that's not happening. So we need to make sure we fund our companies, and that means more capital deployment early to get to those real value inflections. I hope that was not too much.
No, it was wonderful. You all have done so great. And I thank you for your insights and your candor. I'm sure the audience really learned a lot. But yeah, I think we've kind of run out of time. I had 4 more questions, but y'all are great. Y'all are great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were great. You were great.